What you can see in the background right now is me about 2 or 3 months ago where I first started maging, and this was not the early beginnings, this was already when I had some knowledge about the combat style. Because when you are like me and you played a lot of necromancy in your life and then you start to pick up a other combat style, it is really complicated and can also be really frustrating because you pay a lot for the gear and then you basically still dish out less damage. If we then fast forward to today, you can actually notice that I got way cleaner and even was able to dish out the Master Time at Raksha and had some clean runs right there. In this video, I basically want to tell you or want to show you what I learned with the mage combat style to reach that level and maybe help you, if you want to switch to mage, what your first steps should be right here. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment with critics and subscribe if you're new, and let's head right into it. But a quick disclaimer, I am definitely not the best mager in this game, and if you are a good PVMer and you maybe are a good mager, you will learn nothing from this video, but then you also have a little challenge in maybe write some comments what you think could be done even better, or maybe also some things that I messed up a bit or got wrong in my learnings. So first things first, and I think this is the most important thing that you have to realize before you start maging. Maging is all about critting. If you want to mage, or at least go for the standard mage, I think there is also a mage build that evolves around bleeds, but I don't know that, so we are talking about that standard mage build, which is evolved around critting. And if you want to go around that route, you have to understand that crit is basically the most important thing. This lies a little bit in the damage of the mage spell, but also in the adrenaline generation. Because to generate adrenaline, almost all combat styles, only necromancy doesn't, but the other 3 combat styles have an ability that generates some extra adrenaline. For mage, this is the tsunami ability. So let me just quickly stack it up right here so I can cast it. So right here, tsunami, and as soon as I cast this ability, you will see that I now have a buff on my top left. This buff actually generates me additional adrenaline when I crit. So now when I attack, for example, a dummy, I can get more adrenaline if my abilities crit. So as you can see, crit is insanely important for generating adrenaline. But then crit is also important for dealing damage, because one of the biggest damage modifiers that you have is the Fractured Staff of Armadil, which grants a 15 to 25% critical strike damage, which basically means that this staff gives you a passive 15 to 25% additional damage when you crit. So your crits do more damage. Then the Fesoa also have the special attack, which does a damage hit, and after that damage hit, your crits are also buffed for 30 seconds. So when I cast my special attack right here, you can see that I now have this buff right here again, the instability, which says on critical strikes, launch a lightning surge at your target, dealing 70% to 90% damage. So this means again, when I crit, I deal extra damage. And this is basically what makes Magic insanely powerful, insanely cool to play, but also insanely frustrating. Because I gotta say, especially when I wanted to get the Master Time at, for example, Raksha or also the Ambassador, that I quickly had to learn that sometimes you can do everything right and still don't get it simply because your RNG with the crits is not gonna RNG. And therefore you basically have to do as much crit enhancing as you can. Which means that we, for example, have stuff like the Tumikin set, which gives me a critical strike chance while inside Sunshine. So I have to use Sunshine as much as I can and then be inside, so I get critical enhancing. We use the Grimoire, which is when activated, a flat 12% extra critical chance. Then we have the rings with the Channeler's Ring, which basically works that when you use channel abilities that your crit enhances. And then we also have the Reaver's Ring, which is a flat 5% critical chance enhancer, but also 5% less accuracy when you wear it. So if your accuracy is not that good on a boss, this is maybe not the best option. Then we round that up with a familiar, the Calgarian Demon, that basically has with its scrolls inside the effect that Calgarian's Roar activates, and this gives a +5 critical chance. So as you can see, you basically try to enhance your crit chance everywhere you want. And this is something you also do with other combat styles, because crits are just damage and they are OP. But this is something that is the most important in Magic. Okay, now that we know how the crit works and why it's so important, let's just go through the abilities real quick. First, we start with the abilities that you use as your basic spells. Here you have the Ancient Magic book, and you want to use Insight Fear or Exsanguinate, I hope I pronounced that right, for your basic abilities. And basically both of these abilities gives you stack when you use these. So when I attack the dummy here with my ability, now I have Instant Fear active, you can see that I get these stacks. And per stack of the Instant Fear, I reduce the mana or adrenaline cost of my Tsunami. So it is really important to use that ability and get at least 4 stacks before you use Tsunami, so that thing does not cost 100% adrenaline. The other ability is Extinguinate. God, I hope I pronounced that right, man. Holy shit. Is also an ability that gives you stack when you hit your enemy with that, but this one actually just buffs your basic abilities per stack. So your basic magic abilities get +1% base damage per stack. So basically what you want to do, or the best thing to do, is use your Instant Fear at the beginning of the fight, stack it up to 4 or 5, use Tsunami, and after you use Tsunami, switch to the other spell. Now we have the basic abilities, and especially we have Dragon Breath, we have Greater Sonic Wave, and we have Concentrated Blast. And these are really important simply because Concentrated Blast increases the crit of all the 3 attacks that it does, and also for your next attack. So you want to channel that the 3 times, and then you want to use one strong ability of yours to increase your crit chance there. And the Greater Sonic Wave saves you adrenaline on the next spell you do. So you also want to hit that before you use one of your big abilities, so you can save some adrenaline. And then we have the Runic Charge ability that basically is a buffing ability. So you press it and then you have 15 seconds to use one of your basic abilities. You can make more damage with the Dragon Breath and just use it for flat out more damage. The Greater Sonic Wave just will decrease the mana or adrenaline cost for your next spell even more, and the Concentrated Blast will also help you crit enhance your next ability even more. So these are the basic abilities. They're really important to use right. And now what we basically want to do is dish out as much damage as possible. And for this, I, for example, always do a little bit of the same combo. So I basically start versus my enemy, and then I use first of all the spell Smoke Cloud, because this one will basically work like a warm bomb. So it will enhance the damage that you do to your enemy, but the crits, so it enhances your crit damage even more. So I start out by using that, then I use a Greater Sonic Wave and go into my Sunshine. After that, I often use a Adrenaline Potion and my Vulnerability Bomb, and then I try to generate some stacks for my Tsunami, use the Tsunami, and then use my Fractured Staff of Armadale special attack, which is basically the routine to get to my best version. And now I use often a Greater Concentrated Blast into a Wild Magic to dish out some damage, and then use a Asphyxiate so I get that channeled ability and a lot of crits. After that, I either use some Smoke Tendrils if I think I need some more channeling abilities, or I am quickly before a phase transition at Raksha or something, or I use a Runic Charge into a Greater Concentrated Blast into a Omni Power, which is basically the big combo that can dish out up to 60,000 damage with one hit. Then I also have a Essence of Finality with a Legatus Ember Staff in it, which is always a pretty nice hit. And if I do that correctly, I can just melt through enemies. But now I showed you that on a dummy, so let me just quickly show you that in a Raksha full kill. As you can see, I start by using the Smoke Cloud on Raksha, then use a Greater Sonic Wave into a Sunshine. I do that because now I use as little adrenaline as possible for the Sunshine, and I even had some luck and my whole adrenaline got preserved in this case. So this means I'm still at 100% adrenaline. I then use a Concentrated Blast, so I get some stacks for my Tsunami, then I use the Tsunami, I then use my weapon spec, and I think now I forgot to switch my spell, by the way, so in an optimal kill you would now switch the spell. I here then go for a Concentrated Blast to enhance the crit chance into a Wild Magic, into a weapon spec, so I can now run a little bit away so I don't get hit by the melee attack. And as you can see, these were all crits. That is pretty lucky and does a lot of damage. This means that I now am able to use Asphyxiate, which also critted a lot, and therefore Raksha is already phased before I use my next Wild Magic, and Wild Magic strikes in the next phase. Then I do the Smoke Tendrils right here, so a lot of damage by the Smoke Tendrils here, which also increases my crit chance thanks to the ring. But I do that into a Runic Charge, into a Concentrated Blast, because now my crit chance is as high as possible. I can now use my Omni Power, which hits 4 times thanks to the Suck Cape, and now I deal basically, yeah, here only 3 crits as it looks like, but I think it just doesn't show one because it should be 4 crits right here, and Raksha is phased again. And as I mentioned, basically everything critted right here. Not every kill runs like this, definitely not. This was a lucky one, but this is something that can happen, and this is basically also what is the fabulous and the hateful thing about Magic, because kills like these are so insane, so much damage, so much crit, and then other kills you just don't crit and you just die, and it's annoying, you know? But here we have a good example. By now I am in the next phase. I then use a Wild Magic again, a weapon spec, which both critted, which is absolutely insane, into a Greater Concentrated Blast, into a Wild Magic, which again critted, into a Asphyxiate, and now as you can see she's already almost phased. I secure it with a Wild Magic because I knew I still had Adrenaline Potion left to drink, because early I can save it, or I was able to save it because my adrenaline got saved by the perk, which was also kind of lucky. Then I am in the last phase, and this is always a little bit awkward because my skills are on cooldown, and I was also a bit nervous right here because I knew that this could be a PB time, so I pressed a little bit the wrong buttons. But I try to get my Sunshine up as fast as possible, so I used the Sunshine. I had enough adrenaline because I sipped a potion. Then I used my Tsunami, and basically the rotation now starts again. I use the weapon spec to increase my crit damage. Now I try to crit with Concentrated Blast into Asphyxiate. So yeah, I can basically deal a lot of crits and then also generate a lot of adrenaline. Then I use again Runic Charge into the Greater Concentrated Blast, into a Omni Power, which you can see crits 4 times, into a Wild Magic, which didn't crit, but it's not that big of a deal. And then I basically use a Concentrated Blast into a Wild Magic again, and the fight is over. And as you can see, it is the whole magic behind Magic. If you want to keep it or call it really simple, all you do with Magic is basically buff yourself up as high as possible and then use all your strong abilities. It sounds a little bit stupid, but it's basically how it works, because thanks to the mechanic of the Tsunami and the regeneration that you have of your adrenaline when you crit and all your crit enhancing, you can basically spam your abilities. I mean, you can see in this kill right here that I often don't have to use a Concentrated Blast between abilities, and I mainly only use Concentrated Blast between the abilities when I wanted to make sure that the next abilities really crit. So you basically just buff yourself up and then use your ability. But I can definitely say it needs a little bit of practice, because I am still not the cleanest major out here, and by far I was way less clean when I started with maging. So you can definitely be sure that when you now start to mage from scratch, you will have to get used to it, especially when you were like me and you used necromancy before, which is really simple to use. But if you get the hang of it, it is so incredible fun to use a different combat style, and it is also really fun when everything works and you are able to basically just burst down the bosses like I did in this kill here. I mean, there can be a lot of frustration if you want to go for fast kills and you don't crit, but when everything works fine, it is so nice. Okay, so I know this was a bit an unusual video for this channel, but I just wanted to take you with me along this journey because it is something that I'm doing recently a lot. Playing other combat styles and getting used to them. It is so incredible fun, and I just wanted to share with you this video because I thought this would have been something that would help me at the start. But now I hope all of you were able to enjoy the video, got entertained or learned even something, and if so, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!